I am Damien, 32 years old, and last Christmas my entire family laughed when I shared my business dreams. My father called it a fantasy, my brother suggested therapy, and my uncle Frank bellowed, "You'll never make real money doing that." Yesterday I deposited a check for $2.7 million. Now my phone is blowing up with family members who suddenly always believed in me and think they deserve a piece of my success. Before I share how I responded to my family's sudden interest in my success, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had someone doubt your dreams but kept pushing forward anyway. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in suburban Boston shaped my early perspectives on life and success. Our house was modest but comfortable, nestled between similar homes, on a quiet street lined with maple trees that turned brilliant shades of orange and red every fall. My childhood bedroom window overlooked our backyard, where I set up my very first business venture at age 8, a lemonade stand that evolved into a neighborhood refreshment service with my friends as employees. My parents, Robert and Catherine, were practical people who valued stability above all else. Dad worked for 35 years at the same insurance company, climbing from entry-level to middle management through consistent, methodical work. Mom was an elementary school teacher who found joy in shaping young minds, but always emphasized the importance of job security and benefits. They weren't risk-takers, and they raised us to follow what they considered sensible paths. My older brother Marcus was the golden child in their eyes. He excelled academically, never questioned authority, and followed the blueprint for success they had outlined. He attended an Ivy League college, went to law school, and secured a position at a prestigious firm in Boston. By 30, he had the perfect wife, the perfect house, in an upscale neighborhood, and the perfect career trajectory. Every family gathering featured some variation of, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" My younger sister Rachel completed the family success trifecta by becoming a doctor. She specialized in cardiology and married another doctor. Their combined income afforded them a luxurious lifestyle that my parents proudly bragged about to anyone who would listen. Rachel always had a competitive streak, constantly comparing her achievements to mine and making sure everyone knew she was winning. Then there was me, the middle child with the impractical ideas. From an early age, I showed entrepreneurial tendencies that baffled my family. While other kids spent their allowance on candy and toys, I invested mine in supplies for my next venture. I expanded from lemonade to lawn mowing services by 12, and by 16, I had created a small neighborhood tech support business fixing computers for families on our block. College was a compromise. I agreed to study business at my parents' insistence, but I spent more time launching small campus ventures than attending classes. I started a textbook exchange service that undercut the campus bookstore, ran a late-night food delivery service, and developed a primitive app that helped students find study partners. None made significant money, but each taught me valuable lessons about what worked and what didn't. Halfway through my junior year, I made the decision that would create the first major rift between my family and me. I dropped out to pursue a tech startup idea full-time. The family intervention that followed was brutal. Dad called it a phase and offered to get me counseling. Mom cried for days. Marcus lectured me about throwing away my future, and Rachel questioned my mental stability. The consensus was clear: I was making the biggest mistake of my life. The next few years seemed to prove them right. I bounced between different business ideas, experiencing the roller coaster of entrepreneurial life. There were small victories, an app that gained 10,000 users before fizzling out, a consulting gig that paid well but dried up after 6 months, a social media management service that attracted local businesses but couldn't scale. Each failure was followed by smug, "I told you so" comments during family gatherings, coupled with job listings conveniently left on my place setting at dinner. I lived in a small apartment, drove a 15-year-old car, and sometimes struggled to make rent. Meanwhile, Marcus purchased his second home, and Rachel bought a vacation property in the Hamptons. Family photos featured them in designer clothes, while I wore the same button-up shirt I had owned since college. The contrast was stark and intentional, a visual reminder of the success hierarchy in our family. Despite the constant comparisons and disappointment, something within me refused to give up. Each setback taught me something valuable, and I kept refining my approach. I read every business book I could find, attended entrepreneurial meetups, and built a network of like-minded individuals who didn't think my ambitions were delusional. While my family saw a string of failures, I was accumulating the knowledge and experience that would eventually lead to success. Last year's Christmas gathering was hosted at Marcus's newly renovated colonial home in Brookline, an affluent suburb known for its excellent schools and proximity to downtown Boston. The house was a 6,000-square-foot showcase of his success, with soaring ceilings, custom woodwork, and the kind of kitchen that appears in architectural magazines. The moment I pulled up in my aging Toyota, I felt the familiar pang of being the family disappointment. The contrast between my life and theirs was immediately apparent. Marcus greeted me at the door in a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent, while his wife Amanda wore a tasteful array of diamonds that caught the light as she air-kissed my cheek. Their twin boys, dressed in matching holiday outfits, politely shook my hand before returning to their new electronic gadgets. "Damien, you made it," Marcus said, with the slightly condescending tone he always used with me, as if my ability to arrive on time was surprising. "We were just talking about the Robertson case I just won. 7-figure settlement." He slapped my shoulder too hard. "But hey, what are you calling it these days?" "A startup." The house was filled with the extended family, our parents looking older but well-dressed in holiday attire. Rachel and her husband Jonathan, who had flown in from their conference in Switzerland the day before, Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia, who owned a successful chain of hardware stores, various cousins with their spouses and children, and a few family friends who had known us since childhood. The first hour was bearable, filled with general catching up and obligatory small talk. I nursed a glass of expensive whiskey that Marcus made sure everyone knew was rare and costly, while deflecting the usual questions about my dating life and career with practiced responses. Rachel showed everyone photos from their recent trip to Bali, while my mother proudly passed around pictures of Marcus's sons at their private school's fencing tournament. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, where a table that could seat 20 was arranged with fine china crystal glasses and sterling silver cutlery. The catered meal featured prime rib truffle mashed potatoes and various sides that looked like they belonged in a gourmet magazine. I took my assigned seat between Cousin Philip, who worked in finance, and never failed to mention his bonuses, and Aunt Patricia, who specialized in backhanded compliments. The conversation flowed around the table, touching on Rachel's latest medical research publication, Marcus's upcoming promotion to partner, and my parents' plans for their anniversary cruise. I stayed quiet, picking at my food and wondering how soon I could politely leave. Then Uncle Frank, 3 glasses of wine into the evening, turned his attention to me. "So Damien's still playing entrepreneur?" he asked loudly, causing several conversations to pause. "What's the latest million-dollar idea that's going to change the world?" His tone made it clear he expected another failure story to entertain the table. All eyes turned to me, and in that moment I made the mistake of being genuinely excited about my work. I had been developing a software-as-a-service platform that helped small businesses automate their customer relationship management with advanced predictive analytics, making enterprise-level tools accessible to mom-and-pop shops. "Actually, I've been working on a SaaS platform that's showing real promise," I began, straightening in my chair. "We've developed an algorithm that helps small businesses predict customer behavior patterns and automate their marketing responses. We just launched the beta version last month and already have 30 test users giving positive feedback." I should have known better. The moment I mentioned algorithm and SaaS, I saw the familiar glazed looks and suppressed smirks. My father cleared his throat and exchanged a glance with my mother. "That's nice, son," Dad said dismissively. "But when are you going to stop playing with computers and get a real career? You're 32 now. It's time to think about stability, retirement plans, health insurance." Before I could respond, Marcus jumped in with his lawyer voice, the one he used when explaining things to people he considered intellectually inferior. "You know the firm is always looking for people in the marketing department. Nothing fancy, but it has benefits and a clear promotion track." I could put in a word. Rachel touched my arm in what she probably thought was a sympathetic gesture. "We're just concerned, Damien. Jonathan has a colleague who specializes in career counseling. He offers a friends and family discount." I felt my cheeks burning but maintained my composure. Thanks, but I really believe in this project. Our early metrics are promising, and I've been talking with a couple of potential investors who see the value in what we're building. That's when Uncle Frank let out a loud bark of laughter that silenced the table. He raised his wine glass in a mock toast and announced to the entire gathering, "You'll never make real money doing that. When are you going to wake up and join the real world like the rest of us?" The laughter that followed was immediate and crushing. Marcus chuckled while shaking his head. Rachel tried to hide her smile behind her napkin, and even my parents couldn't suppress their amusement. Cousin Philip slapped the table and said something about tech bros and their dreams, while Aunt Patricia remarked that not everyone is cut out for success. In that moment, I felt completely alone at a table surrounded by family. The food turned to ash in my mouth, and the elegant dining room seemed to close in around me. I maintained a tight smile, waiting for the moment to pass, but the damage was done. The conversation eventually shifted to safer topics, but occasional glances and smirks in my direction continued throughout dessert. I made it through another hour before claiming an early morning meeting as an excuse to leave. No one seemed particularly disappointed by my departure. Marcus walked me to the door with another heavy hand on my shoulder, and a hang in there, bro, that sounded more like pity than encouragement. Sitting alone in my car in the dark, I felt something break inside me. Not my spirit or my determination, but rather the last thread of seeking my family's approval. Hot tears threatened, but I blinked them back and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. In that moment, I made a promise to myself next Christmas would be different, not because I would have given up, but because I would have succeeded on my own terms. After the Christmas dinner debacle, I returned to my small one-bedroom apartment in Somerville, a haven for young professionals and graduate students who couldn't afford Boston proper. The place wasn't much 800 square feet, with faded carpeting, outdated appliances, and furniture, mostly acquired from secondhand stores. But that night it became my war room, the headquarters for the most determined year of my life. I spent the week between Christmas and New Year converting my hurt and humiliation into pure focused motivation. The mocking laughter of my family played on repeat in my mind, not as a discouragement, but as fuel. I created a detailed business plan, mapping out every aspect of developing and scaling my SaaS platform. My living room wall became covered with whiteboards, sticky notes, and printouts of competitor analyses and market research. My concept was solid. Small businesses were underserved by existing customer relationship management software, which was either too basic or designed for enterprises with six-figure IT budgets. My platform, which I named Relation AI, would bridge that gap with sophisticated but user-friendly tools that required minimal technical knowledge to implement. The artificial intelligence component would analyze customer data to predict behaviors and automate personalized marketing campaigns. The technical challenges were substantial. I had decent coding skills but needed someone with expertise in machine learning algorithms and data architecture. Working 18-hour days, I divided my time between refining the business model and building a rudimentary prototype that could demonstrate the concept to potential technical partners. Sleep became a luxury. My routine consisted of waking at 5 coding until my day job as a freelance web developer started at 9, working client projects until 6, then returning to Relation AI development until midnight or later. Weekends disappeared, entirely replaced by marathon coding sessions fueled by energy drinks and determination. The breakthrough came in February at a local tech meetup in Cambridge. I was presenting my prototype in the 5-minute pitch segment when Samuel Johnson, a data scientist who had recently left a major tech company, approached me afterward. Tall and lanky with thick glasses and an intense gaze, Samuel didn't waste time with small talk. "Your user interface is decent, but your back-end architecture needs work," he said bluntly, "and your algorithm is too simplistic to deliver on the promises you're making." Most people would have been offended, but I recognized the critique as both accurate and an opportunity. I know I admitted. That's why I'm looking for a technical co-founder who can build what I'm envisioning. We moved to a nearby coffee shop and talked until they kicked us out at closing time. Samuel had been contemplating his own startup but was stronger on technical execution than business development. Our skills complemented each other perfectly. I understood the market and could translate technical capabilities into benefits that would resonate with small business owners, while he could build the sophisticated back-end that would make those benefits possible. By the end of the week, Samuel and I had formed a partnership. We each put in $20,000 of our savings, enough to cover basic expenses for a few months, while we developed a proper minimum viable product. We converted my apartment into our office, with my dining table serving as our shared desk and the second bedroom becoming a server room that raised my electric bill to painful levels. The next 3 months were a blur of coding, testing, pivoting, and more coding. Samuel restructured the entire back end while I refined the user experience and developed our go-to-market strategy. We survived on ramen noodles, discount groceries, and the occasional pizza when we hit important milestones. Neither of us took a day off working from dawn until we couldn't keep our eyes open any longer. Our first real test came in May, when we released the beta version to a carefully selected group of 20 small businesses in the Boston area. We had reached out to local coffee shops, boutique retailers, service providers, and restaurants, offering 6 months of free access in exchange for weekly feedback and usage data. 15 agreed to participate. The initial feedback was sobering. Users found the interface confusing, the setup process too complicated, and some of the predictive features missed the mark entirely. For a week, Samuel and I barely spoke, both wrestling with the possibility that the entire concept might be flawed. Then, instead of giving up, we systematically addressed each issue, spending hours interviewing our users and observing how they interacted with the platform. By July, we had pivoted twice, simplifying the core offering and focusing on the features that provided immediate value. The revised version resonated with our test group, and word began to spread. 3 of our beta users became our most effective salespeople, recommending Relation AI to other business owners in their networks. By the end of summer, we had expanded to 50 paid users at $99 per month, hardly enough to make us profitable, but sufficient to prove that people would pay for our solution. Cold calling became part of my daily routine. I targeted small business associations, chambers of commerce, and industry-specific groups, offering free webinars to demonstrate how Relation AI could increase customer retention and boost repeat sales. Most calls ended in rejection, but each positive response expanded our network and improved our pitch for the next call. Our first major break came from a local boutique clothing store that saw a 30% increase in repeat customer visits after implementing our personalized email campaign tools. The owner was so impressed that she featured us in her interview with a popular retail industry blog. That single mention brought us 20 new signups within a week. The real game changer occurred in September, at a tech networking event, hosted by a venture capital firm in downtown Boston. I had scraped together enough money for a proper suit and business cards, determined to make connections that could help us scale. The venue was an upscale rooftop bar with panoramic views of the city skyline, filled with successful entrepreneurs and investors who seemed to radiate confidence and success. Feeling out of place but resolved to make the most of the opportunity, I approached various groups, introducing myself and briefly explaining Relation AI. Most conversations ended quickly, with polite nods and empty promises to connect later. 3 hours in, with nothing to show for my efforts, I was about to leave when I literally bumped into Jessica Torres, spilling her drink in the process. Jessica, I would later learn, was a partner at Horizon Ventures, a firm specializing in early-stage tech investments. In my profuse apologies and offer to replace her drink, I mentioned what had brought me to the event. Something in my 30-second explanation caught her interest. Small business AI that actually works. I've heard that promise before, she said skeptically. What makes yours different? Instead of launching into a rehearsed pitch, I pulled out my phone and showed her our dashboard with real-time data from our clients. I explained how a local flower shop had increased their customer retention by 45% in just 2 months, using our predictive reminder system for anniversaries and special occasions. Jessica listened intently, asking pointed questions about our technology, business model, and growth strategy. By the end of our conversation, she handed me her card with a handwritten note for her assistant to schedule a formal pitch meeting the following week. The pitch meeting was the most nerve-wracking experience of my professional life. Samuel and I spent days preparing, anticipating every possible question and objection. We arrived at Horizon Ventures' sleek office, with comprehensive market analyses, detailed technical documentation, and case studies from our most successful users. Jessica and her team grilled us for 3 hours, challenging every assumption and projection. There were moments when I was certain we had lost them, particularly when discussing our valuation expectations. We left exhausted and uncertain, told only that they would be in touch. 2 weeks of agonizing silence followed. Samuel and I continued working on product improvements, trying not to check our emails every 5 minutes. Then on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Jessica called with an offer $250,000 in seed funding in exchange for a 15% equity stake along with mentorship and industry connections. After consulting with a lawyer friend who reviewed the terms we accepted, the validation of professional investors believing in our vision was almost as valuable as the money itself. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that my family's mockery might actually be proven wrong. With the seed funding secured, we immediately upgraded from my apartment to a legitimate office space, albeit a modest one. We found an affordable loft in a renovated textile factory in Somerville, with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and enough space for up to 10 employees. Moving our servers and equipment took just 1 day, but the psychological impact of having a real business address was immeasurable. Our first hire was Emily Chen, a front-end developer with experience at several successful startups. Short, energetic, and brutally honest Emily immediately identified multiple ways to improve our user interface and streamline the onboarding process. Her contributions helped reduce our initial setup time from 40 minutes to under 15, removing a major barrier to adoption. Next came Tyler Washington, a recent marketing graduate with a knack for digital advertising and content creation. Tyler revamped our website, created tutorial videos, and developed targeted ad campaigns that increased our conversion rates by 60% within his first month. His infectious enthusiasm and creative approach brought fresh energy to our growing team. Rounding out our initial hires was Diana Rodriguez, a customer success specialist who had previously worked for a major CRM company. Diana established our support protocols, created comprehensive training materials, and personally onboarded our most valuable clients. Her patience and technical knowledge earned us glowing reviews and valuable referrals. With a real team in place, we established a company culture based on transparency, innovation, and work-life balance. Despite the startup pressure, I insisted on reasonable hours and made sure everyone took weekends off, having learned from my own burnout experiences. We instituted weekly team lunches, where everyone shared their challenges and wins, fostering a collaborative environment where ideas flowed freely. Product development accelerated with our expanded resources. Samuel led the technical team in implementing advanced features that had previously been just ideas on our roadmap: predictive inventory management, customer sentiment analysis, and integration with popular e-commerce platforms. Each new feature opened doors to additional market segments and strengthened our value proposition. Our customer acquisition strategy evolved beyond cold calling and word of mouth. Tyler implemented a content marketing approach, publishing case studies, industry-specific guides, and data-driven articles that positioned Relation AI as a thought leader in small business technology. We launched a referral program that incentivized existing customers to recommend our platform, resulting in a 25% increase in new signups. The growth wasn't without challenges. A competing product launched with similar features and aggressive pricing, temporarily slowing our momentum. We responded not by lowering our prices, but by enhancing our product, adding exclusive features that addressed specific pain points our customers had identified. This approach not only retained our existing users, but attracted customers from our competitor who found their one-size-fits-all solution lacking in comparison to our tailored approach. 6 months after receiving funding, we landed our first major client, a regional chain of 30 fitness centers looking to improve member retention and upsell their premium services. The contract was worth $20,000 per month, more than doubling our recurring revenue overnight. The implementation was challenging, requiring custom features and integration with their existing systems, but the successful deployment became a powerful case study for attracting similar multi-location businesses. Our success began attracting media attention. A profile in Boston Business Journal led to mentions in industry publications and an invitation for me to speak at a regional small business conference. Each appearance expanded our network and brought new opportunities, including partnership inquiries from complementary service providers looking to integrate with our platform. Behind the scenes, however, we faced the typical growing pains of a scaling startup. Cash flow remained tight as we reinvested every dollar into growth. We had to carefully balance hiring needs against financial constraints, often requiring team members to wear multiple hats. Our server infrastructure struggled to keep up with increasing usage, leading to occasional performance issues that required emergency weekend work to resolve. The personal toll was significant. Though I enforced reasonable hours for my team, I rarely followed my own rules. Most nights I was the last to leave the office, often sleeping on the couch we had installed for late work sessions. My diet consisted of whatever could be delivered to the office, and my exercise routine had become non-existent. Friends stopped inviting me to social events, knowing I would likely cancel at the last minute due to work emergencies. The wake-up call came in April when I found myself in the emergency room with chest pains, convinced I was having a heart attack at 32. After a battery of tests, the doctor informed me it was severe anxiety and exhaustion, not a cardiac event. He was blunt in his assessment. If I continued at this pace, my next visit would be for something much worse. That health scare forced me to reevaluate my approach to building the business. With Jessica's guidance, I learned to delegate more effectively, trusting my team to handle responsibilities I had previously insisted on overseeing personally. I established actual working hours for myself and rediscovered the concept of weekends. The company didn't collapse without my constant presence. In fact, empowering my team members to make decisions often resulted in better outcomes than my sleep-deprived judgment would have produced. By summer, our user base had grown to over 500 paying customers, and our monthly recurring revenue exceeded $100,000. We had expanded to 12 full-time employees and moved to a larger office in the same building to accommodate our growth. The company was not yet profitable due to our continued investments in product development and marketing, but our unit economics were strong, with customer acquisition costs well below lifetime value. Our progress attracted attention from investors looking to participate in our next funding round. Jessica helped us prepare for these discussions, refining our pitch and financial projections. After considering multiple offers, we accepted $1.2 million from a consortium led by Horizon Ventures, valuing the company at $8 million pre-money. The investment would fund our expansion into new markets and the development of additional features requested by our enterprise clients. Throughout this period of intense growth and change, I maintained radio silence with my family. No Christmas cards, no birthday calls, no updates on the business. Their mockery had cut too deep, and I was determined that they would learn about my success only when it was undeniable. Little did I know that moment was approaching faster than I anticipated. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in October, nearly 10 months after that fateful Christmas dinner. At first, I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam or a phishing attempt. The subject line read, "Potential acquisition discussion from a vice president at TechFusion, one of the largest enterprise software companies in the country. Why would a company with billions in annual revenue be interested in our relatively small operation?" Curiosity won out, and I opened the message. The content was brief but clear. They had been monitoring our growth and were impressed by our technology and market penetration in the small business segment, an area where their own offerings had struggled to gain traction. They were interested in discussing a potential acquisition and suggested a preliminary call later that week. I forwarded the email to Samuel and Jessica, half expecting them to confirm my suspicion that this was some elaborate scam. Their responses came within minutes of each other, both expressing cautious excitement and urging me to take the call. Jessica offered to join as an advisor, having been through acquisition discussions with other portfolio companies. The initial video call included 3 executives from TechFusion, the VP, who had emailed me their head of product strategy and a business development director. They explained that after multiple failed attempts to capture the small business market with scaled-down versions of their enterprise products, they had decided to explore acquisition as an alternative strategy. Relation AI had caught their attention because of our rapid growth, positive customer reviews, and our technology's scalability potential. They were particularly interested in our artificial intelligence components, which outperformed their own solutions in specific use cases, despite our much smaller development resources. The conversation remained high level, focusing on vision alignment and potential synergies rather than specific numbers. When they asked about our interest in being acquired, I gave a non-committal response about being open to opportunities that would accelerate our mission of empowering small businesses. After the call, our team gathered to discuss the surprising development. Opinions were mixed. Some saw it as validation of our work and a potential windfall, while others worried about losing control of the product we had poured our hearts into building. Samuel was particularly concerned about how our customers would be treated under corporate ownership, many of whom had chosen us specifically because we weren't a faceless conglomerate. We decided to proceed with discussions while remaining non-committal, a strategy Jessica strongly endorsed. "Let them show their cards first," she advised. "The more interested they are, the better your negotiating position." A week later, we received a preliminary offer, $1.5 million, primarily in Tech Fusion stock with a small cash component. The figure was disappointing given our recent valuation of $8 million in our funding round. More concerning were the terms. The entire team would be required to join Tech Fusion, with 3-year lockup periods, and the Relation AI brand would be phased out within 6 months. Jessica helped us craft a response that politely indicated the offer was insufficient, while keeping the door open for continued discussions. We emphasized our strong growth trajectory, unique technology assets, and the value of our established market position. Rather than countering with a specific number, we asked them to reconsider based on these factors. Their revised offer came 3 weeks later, $2 million, with improved terms regarding team autonomy and brand preservation. Still, it fell short of what we believed the company was worth. The negotiation continued through November, with incremental improvements to the offer, but no breakthrough moment. The process was emotionally exhausting. Each day brought new questions to wrestle with. Were we being greedy by holding out for more? Were we missing an opportunity that might not come again? How would this decision affect our employees who had trusted their careers to our vision? Lost sleep, weighing these questions, often finding myself in the office at midnight, running financial projections and growth scenarios. By early December, we had reached a stalemate. Tech Fusion's latest offer stood at $2.3 million with reasonable terms, but we had set $2.5 million as our minimum acceptable figure. After a particularly frustrating call where they indicated this was their best and final offer, I was prepared to walk away and focus on our original growth plan. That evening, Samuel and I stayed late at the office reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this crossroads. We reviewed our original business plan, laughing at some of our naive projections and marveling at how far we had exceeded others. Somewhere in that conversation, we gained clarity. This wasn't just about the money, but about ensuring the product we had built would reach its full potential and continue to serve the customers who had believed in us. The next morning, I called Tech Fusion's VP with a counterproposal. We would accept their $2.3 million figure, but with adjusted terms, including greater protection for our team, guaranteed development resources for our product roadmap, and a performance-based earnout that could potentially add several $100,000 to the final amount. There was a long pause on the line before he responded, "Let me take this to the team. I think we might have a deal." 48 hours later, we received the revised agreement with all of our requested terms included, plus a surprise increase in the base acquisition amount to $2.7 million. Their explanation was simple. They wanted to start the relationship on a positive note, not with a sense that they had squeezed us on valuation. The final negotiations moved quickly, with attorneys from both sides hammering out the details over the next 2 weeks. On December 21st, exactly 1 year and 4 days after my family had laughed at my entrepreneurial aspirations, I sat in Tech Fusion's gleaming headquarters in downtown Boston, signing the final acquisition documents. The moment the last signature was in place, the room erupted in applause and champagne appeared as if by magic. The celebration continued that evening with our entire team and key investors at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor. Toasts were made to the journey, the future, and the partnership between our companies. Tech Fusion's CEO made a surprise appearance, expressing his excitement about bringing our technology and talent into their organization. Amid the festivities, I stepped outside for a moment alone on the restaurant's terrace. The December air was frigid, but I barely noticed as I looked out at the city lights reflecting on the dark water. The check would be wired to our accounts the next day. After investor distributions and setting aside funds for taxes, my personal share would be just over $1 million, with additional earnout potential based on performance. Targets. The money was significant, life-changing even, but in that quiet moment, what I felt most wasn't excitement about the wealth, but vindication. The business that my family had mocked as a fantasy had been valuable enough for a major corporation to pay millions to acquire. The path I had chosen despite their derision had been right for me all along. As I rejoined the celebration, I made a decision I would not immediately tell my family about the acquisition. Christmas was just 4 days away, and for the first time since I could remember, I had declined the invitation to attend the family gathering, citing work commitments. Let them have their holiday without knowledge of my success. The news would reach them soon enough. The acquisition was announced in the Boston Business Journal on December 27th, in an article that detailed Tech Fusion's purchase of Relation AI for $2.7 million. The piece included a brief profile of me, as the founder, mentioning my background and vision for bringing enterprise-level technology to small businesses. It wasn't front-page news, but within the local business community, it generated significant interest. I was in the midst of post-acquisition meetings when my phone began vibrating incessantly with notifications. At first, I assumed it was congratulatory messages from colleagues or industry contacts who had seen the announcement. When I finally had a moment to check during a coffee break, I found my inbox and message apps flooded with communications from family members who had been silent for months. The first was a text from my sister Rachel. "Is this your company in the Business Journal? $2.7 million. Call me ASAP." This was followed by 3 missed calls and another message demanding to know why I hadn't shared the news with the family. My father had left a voicemail, his voice uncharacteristically warm and enthusiastic. "Damien, your mother and I just heard about your business sale. We're so proud of you, son. Always knew you had it in you. Give us a call when you can." The revisionist history was jarring given his consistent lack of faith in my entrepreneurial pursuits. Perhaps most surprising was a LinkedIn message from Marcus, who had never before engaged with my professional updates on the platform. "Little brother, you've been holding out on us. Just saw the news about Relation AI. Always said you were the smart one in the family. Let's grab lunch next week, my treat. We have a lot to catch up on." My mother's message was the only one that contained a hint of genuine emotion. Her voice trembled slightly as she expressed how proud she was and acknowledged that she hadn't always understood my choices. "We love you, Damien. Please call us soon." It was the closest thing to an apology I would likely receive. Then came Uncle Frank's voicemail, the most brazen revision of reality I had encountered. "Damien, Frank here. Just read about your big success in the paper. Always told everyone my nephew was going to make it big in tech. Remember all those encouraging conversations we had? Anyway, call your old uncle when you get a chance. I've got some ideas I'd love to run by you." The audacity was almost comical. This was the same man who had led the chorus of laughter at my expense just 12 months earlier, publicly declaring I would never make real money with my business ideas. Now he was claiming to have been my cheerleader all along. By afternoon, the extended family had joined the parade of sudden interest in my life. Cousin Philip wanted to discuss potential investment opportunities. Aunt Patricia hoped I might contribute to her son's college fund, as he was interested in computers too. Second cousins I barely knew found my email address to share their congratulations and coincidentally mention their own financial challenges. The most transparent approach came from my brother Marcus, who followed his initial message with a more detailed email outlining his current financial situation. He and Amanda were planning to upgrade to an even larger home, but were just a bit short on the down payment for their dream property. He framed it as an investment opportunity for me, offering a promissory note with family-friendly terms for a loan of $200,000. Rachel's follow-up was equally direct, though couched in medical terminology. She and Jonathan were considering opening a private practice, but needed capital for the initial setup. Since I now had excess liquidity, perhaps I would be interested in becoming a silent partner in their venture. They would only need about $350,000 to get started. My father's second call avoided specific dollar amounts, but heavily emphasized that he and my mother were nearing retirement age with concerns about their financial security. He mentioned their mortgage, outstanding medical bills, and the cruise they had always dreamed of taking but could never afford. The implication was clear now that I had means I was expected to provide for them. The family grapevine worked with remarkable efficiency. Within 48 hours of the article's publication, I had heard from virtually every relative who shared a drop of my DNA, each message following a similar pattern. Brief congratulations, followed by financial expectations thinly, disguised as investment opportunities or reminders of family obligations. The familiar guilt tactics emerged quickly. My mother wondered why I hadn't shared my success with them, saying it hurt deeply to learn about it from the newspaper. Marcus suggested that family members should support each other's dreams, just like we always supported yours. The irony was apparently lost on him. Aunt Patricia took a more direct approach, stating plainly that family helps family, and reminding me of how they had included me in holiday gatherings even when I had nothing to contribute. The birthday checks she had sent during my childhood were specifically mentioned as past generosity that should now be reciprocated. The constant messages and calls left me feeling ambivalent and conflicted. Part of me wanted to respond with righteous anger, reminding them of their mockery and disbelief. Another part wondered if this was an opportunity to rebuild relationships on new terms, now that I had proven myself by their materialistic standards. Unable to sleep as I wrestled with these thoughts, I called the one person who had consistently supported me through the entrepreneurial roller coaster, to my best friend Alex, who had moved to Chicago years earlier but remained a constant presence in my life through regular video calls and messages. "They're showing you exactly who they are," Alex said after listening to my summary of the family response. "The question is whether you want those people in your life, and if so, on what terms." We talked until 3 in the morning, discussing boundaries, forgiveness, and the complex emotions that family relationships evoke. Alex reminded me that money often reveals character rather than changing it, and that the way my family was approaching me now was consistent with how they had always viewed relationships, as transactional rather than supportive. "You don't owe them anything," Alex said before we ended the call. "But whatever you decide to do, make sure it's because it aligns with your values, not because of guilt or obligation." In the days that followed, I intentionally didn't respond to any of the messages, giving myself space to process my feelings and decide on a course of action. I consulted with a financial advisor about setting boundaries and protecting my assets, and I spoke with a therapist about navigating the emotional complexity of the situation. As the new year began, I reached clarity about what I wanted to do. I would not avoid my family or cut them off entirely, but neither would I allow myself to become their financial solution. The relationships would need to be rebuilt on mutual respect, not monetary expectations. And I knew exactly how I would communicate this to them. After careful consideration, I decided to address the situation head-on rather than avoiding the uncomfortable conversations. I sent a group email to my immediate family inviting them to a meeting at my new office the following Saturday. The message was brief and professional, simply stating that I wanted to discuss recent developments in person. I extended separate invitations to Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia, feeling they deserved special attention given their prominent role in last year's Christmas dinner incident. The responses were immediate and enthusiastic, with everyone rearranging their schedules to attend. I asked Emily, our front-end developer, who had become a trusted friend, to be present as moral support and to help give a tour of our operations before the main discussion. When Saturday arrived, I was surprised by the nervous anticipation I felt. Our office, while modest compared to TechFusion's headquarters, was impressive in its own right, with our logo prominently displayed, awards and press mentions on the walls, and a collaborative workspace that reflected our company culture. I had arranged for a catered lunch to be set up in our conference room, professional but not extravagant. My family arrived together, having apparently coordinated their transportation. Their attire suggested they had dressed to impress Marcus in a tailored suit, Rachel in designer business casual, my parents in their Sunday best, and even Uncle Frank had traded his usual casual wear for a sport coat. Their expressions as they entered the office ranged from obvious impressed surprise to calculated assessment of the surroundings. "Welcome to Relation AI." I greeted them with professional courtesy rather than the familiar hugs they seemed to expect. "I thought you might like to see where it all happened before we talk." Emily led the tour, explaining our technology and introducing them to the weekend team members who were present. I watched their reactions as they began to understand the scope and legitimacy of what I had built. My father lingered at the wall displaying our client testimonials, while Marcus studied the industry awards with poorly concealed surprise. Rachel asked detailed questions about our business model, clearly calculating potential returns in her head. When we gathered in the conference room for lunch, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken expectations. Small talk dominated the first 15 minutes as everyone carefully avoided the financial elephant in the room. Finally, after dessert was served, I stood at the head of the table to address the reason for our gathering. I appreciate you all coming today. I began maintaining eye contact with each person. As you now know, Relation AI was acquired by TechFusion for $2.7 million last month. What you may not know is that the journey to that success was challenging, isolating, and at times profoundly discouraging. I paused, allowing my gaze to rest specifically on Uncle Frank, who suddenly became very interested in his coffee cup. Last Christmas, when I shared my vision for this company, the response I received was mockery and dismissal. "Uncle Frank, you told me," and I quote, "you'll never make real money doing that." Others around the table laughed and suggested I needed career counseling, a real job, or even therapy. The uncomfortable shifting in seats was visible, with my mother looking down and my father clearing his throat. Marcus attempted to interject with what appeared to be damage control, but I held up my hand. "I'm not sharing this to make you feel bad or to hold grudges. I'm sharing it because it's important to acknowledge our past interactions honestly if we want to have authentic relationships moving forward." The truth is that dinner was painful for me, but it also became a powerful motivator. Every time I faced a setback or doubted myself, I remembered the laughter and used it as fuel to prove you wrong. I walked around the table, slowly continuing my address. In the past week, I've received messages from nearly every family member suddenly interested in my life, and coincidentally in need of financial assistance or investment. Some of these requests have been subtle, others remarkably direct. All of them came from people who showed little interest in my work until it produced a significant financial outcome. Rachel started to protest, but I pressed on. I understand that family is complicated. I understand that relationships evolve and people can change. What I'm trying to determine is whether the recent outreach is about reconnecting with me as a person or accessing my new financial resources. The silence that followed was heavy with discomfort. Finally, my father spoke up, his voice uncharacteristically humble. "Son, we didn't always understand what you were trying to build. Traditional careers made sense to us because they were safe, predictable. We worried about you struggling when your siblings were settled. It wasn't right to dismiss your dreams, and I'm sorry for that." His apology seemed genuine, the first real acknowledgement of how they had treated me. My mother reached for his hand, tears in her eyes as she nodded in agreement. Uncle Frank was less contrite. "Business is business, Damien. Sometimes people need a challenge to prove themselves. Maybe what I said pushed you to work harder." His attempt to reframe his mockery as motivation was transparent and self-serving. "I appreciate your perspective, Uncle Frank," I replied coolly. "Now let me share my decision regarding the various requests I've received." I returned to the head of the table and sat down, making sure I had everyone's attention. I will not be providing direct financial gifts or loans to any family members. This isn't because I'm ungenerous or holding grudges. It's because wealth transfers without purpose often damage relationships rather than strengthening them. The disappointment was visible on several faces, with Marcus unable to conceal his frustration. Before anyone could protest, I continued with the second part of my plan. "However, I am establishing an education fund for all current and future nieces and nephews in the family, including Marcus's sons and any children Rachel may have in the future. This fund will provide up to $50,000 per child for college or vocational training expenses paid directly to the institutions." This announcement was met with mixed reactions: appreciation from my parents, calculation from Rachel, as she considered her future family planning, and obvious disappointment from Marcus, who had clearly hoped for direct access to funds. Additionally, I've consulted with a financial advisor about setting up a modest retirement supplement for Mom and Dad, ensuring they can complete their mortgage payments and take that cruise they've always wanted. This isn't because of obligation, but because I want to, and because they supported me in many ways throughout my childhood, even if we disagreed on my career choices. My mother began crying openly at this, while my father struggled to maintain his composure, managing only a gruff, "Thank you, son." For extended family, I continued looking at Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia. I'm making a donation in the family name to a local entrepreneurship program that supports young people pursuing unconventional career paths. I believe in paying forward the success I've achieved, rather than paying off people who didn't believe it was possible. Uncle Frank's face reddened, but Aunt Patricia surprisingly nodded with what appeared to be genuine understanding. These decisions aren't negotiable, I concluded. They reflect my values and my hope for healthier family relationships going forward. I'm open to rebuilding connections with all of you, but those connections need to be based on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives, not financial expectations. The reactions divided the family clearly. Marcus and Uncle Frank made quick exits after realizing no direct payments would be forthcoming, offering perfunctory thanks for the meeting and flimsy excuses about other commitments. Rachel lingered longer, her response more nuanced, as she processed the educational fund offer and its implications for her future planning. My parents stayed the longest, engaging in the first real conversation we'd had in years. Without the pressure of trying to convert me to their definition of success, we found common ground in discussing their retirement plans and sharing stories from my entrepreneurial journey that they had never heard. There was awkwardness and there were difficult moments, but there was also authentic communication for the first time in memory. Over the following months, my relationship with family members evolved along lines that reflected their true values. Those who had only been interested in financial gain gradually stopped calling when it became clear my boundaries were firm. Others, primarily my parents, and surprisingly Aunt Patricia, made genuine efforts to understand my work and reconnect on personal levels. The boundaries I established that day became the foundation for healthier relationships. My parents and I developed a new appreciation for each other's perspectives. We didn't always agree, but we learned to respect our differences. Their pride in my accomplishments became genuine rather than tied to dollar figures. Rachel and I established a cautious but improving sibling relationship. Her initial disappointment at not receiving direct funding evolved into respect for my principles, especially after her first child was born, and the reality of the education fund became more concrete. Marcus remained distant, our interactions limited to obligatory family gatherings, where he maintained a veneer of brotherly affection, without substance beneath. As for my professional life, the acquisition proved to be just the beginning of a new chapter. The earn-out period with Tech Fusion went smoothly, with our technology successfully integrated into their enterprise offerings while maintaining its accessibility for small businesses. After completing my contractual obligations, I began mentoring other entrepreneurs and making small investments in startups with visions similar to what Relation AI had been. The experience taught me lasting lessons about success, relationships, and self-worth. I learned that external validation, whether from family or society, is fleeting and conditional. True fulfillment comes from building something meaningful and staying true to your vision, even when others cannot see it. Financial success amplifies who you already are, revealing both the best and worst in yourself and those around you. Most importantly, I discovered that the most valuable capital isn't financial but emotional and spiritual self-belief, perseverance, integrity, and the courage to establish healthy boundaries. Money can buy comfort and security, but it cannot purchase genuine connection or respect. Those must be earned through consistent character and mutual appreciation. Today, I measure my wealth not by the balance in my bank account, but by the impact of my work, the authenticity of my relationships, and my freedom to create on my own terms. The mockery that once cut so deeply has become a reminder of how far I've come, not just financially, but as a person who knows his worth beyond any dollar amount. Have you ever had someone dismiss your dreams only to change their tune when you succeeded? How did you handle the sudden shift in their attitude? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more experiences that might help you navigate your own journey. Remember, sometimes the best response to mockery isn't anger or revenge, but simply proving them wrong through your success. Thank you for listening, And whatever dream you're pursuing, keep going. Your vindication might be closer than you think.